All right, we're ready. Okay. Firstly, thank you everyone for joining. Everyone who is here, everyone who is going to be joining us. Thank you for coming to this IKF Student Athlete webinar. We're really grateful to be joined by three university coaches, James Hamilton, Joseph Ruesgen, and Colin Hodge. Before we get into it and before I introduce all the coaches, I want to just give a brief structure of this webinar, what we are trying to do, and what we will be doing in the next hour or the next hour and a half. So, firstly, it's important to mention that this webinar is it's not a promotion, it's not a pitch. It's simply a platform where we are trying to empower and educate the players and parents about different pathways. As you all know, India Khelo Football as an organization is always focused on creating new pathways and helping Indian footballers achieve their dreams of playing professional football or taking their career to the highest level possible. And we have identified the student athlete pathway in the US to be one more option or one more opportunity for an Indian footballer to take their career forward. And we thought that it's important for you, parents, and the players to understand really what this is through first hand knowledge through these coaches to be able to have the knowledge about this pathway and make the right decisions. So we are going to, I'll be doing a brief introduction of the coaches. After that, we'll be getting into a general conversation, everything about the student athlete procedure and what the US university soccer structure is like. And in the end, we'll leave some time for all your questions and answers. So do save the questions for the end, or if you do have any, just put them in the chat box so that they don't get lost, and we'll definitely get to them in the end. So without further ado, I'm going to start introducing our panel over here. So first of all, we have Mr. Joseph Ruesgen, who is joining us from New York University today. He is the NYU assistant coach since 2016. NYU is New York University, and they play in the NCAA Division 3. He has helped guide his team to multiple NCAA appearances. A former professional player, he leads the recruiting and player development while holding a master's degree in global sports from NYU. Hi, Joseph. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Very excited.
Moving on to James Hamilton. James Hamilton is the Iowa men's head soccer coach since 2016. They play in the NCAA Division 1. He led the team to MAAC titles in 2019 and 2024, and he earned the Coach of the Year honors and guided Iowa to two NCAA tournament appearances. Hello, James. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Lastly, we have Mr. Colin Hodge, head coach at South Kent Prep School since 2023, a former Dominican University player and a USSFA license holder. He emphasizes character development and player development on and off the field. Colin Hodge has also been the head coach at Dominican University that play at the NCAA Division 2, and he has also coached a USL League 2 team. Thank you for joining us today, Colin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Great. And a quick brief introduction about myself. I'm Aryaman Trehan, founder of Aperio Sports. We're a sports organization that works on creating structured pathways for Indian footballers. So, further, I would like to hand it over to you guys, coaches, to give some more details about yourselves, about your institution, and what you are currently doing. So let's start. Let's start with you, James. Please go ahead.
Yeah, not a problem. Yes, as Aryaman said, James Hamilton. I'm originally from Scotland. I was an international student athlete myself, 2006 to 2010. I played Division 2, so I went through that pathway and stayed on at Dominican College and became part of their coaching staff for 5-6 years, I believe, before getting the opportunity to then move to Division 1. So I was an assistant coach at the Division 1 level for 1 year, and then was in the right place at the right time. My head coach moved on to the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and I became the head coach at Iona. So I'm just going into my 10th year now at Iona University. It's also in New York. It's a small private Catholic institution. Primarily, our academic focus is in the business school, although we just opened a school of nursing. So so we've had a fair bit of success, and we can talk more about the football side of things in a little bit. But that's basically a brief overview of my trajectory.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, James. Moving forward to Joseph, you can take it on as well.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Yeah. So as Aryaman gave like a very brief overview. I've been at NYU, also gone into my 10th year there. Before that, similar to James and Colin, we were actually all roommates and mates when we were in college. That's how we all initially met. After that, I had some opportunities to play when I was deemed that I wasn't good enough. I obviously got into to coaching more and have been doing that since, I've been coaching since I was probably about 17. So I've been doing it for a long, long time. And then obviously when I got into the college game, I did it briefly at Dominican where I graduated from. After that, I was a head coach of a college women's program. I did that for 3 years, and then I moved back over to the men's side, and I've been at NYU ever since. NYU, obviously, a much larger institution in New York City. But I guess we can share some more information about the specifics of the school as we get further into this. But thanks again for having me today. Looking forward to chatting.
Thank you for that, Joseph. And lastly, Colin, please go for it.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being on the call. Like James and Joe, I coached at Dominican College for about 15 years as an assistant coach and also the head coach. Dominican College is different than Joe and where James coached because it's NCAA Division II, but a very good level located just outside of New York City. And as you can tell from their accents, Joe and James are both international students, and there's a big draw for international students, especially where these three schools are in the New York-based area. So you see a big influx of kids from all over the world coming to universities in New York. Currently now, this will be my third year. I'm now at a high school. It's a preparatory school, and it's an all-boys school in Connecticut, which is about an hour and a half north of New York City. So the prep school is also, we have a lot of American kids, but also international kids from all over the world. So a lot of, I would say, international kids use the prep school world to come here and get accustomed to American life while continuing to play soccer and then get visibility in front of U.S. college coaches in their recruitment process. So, it's a good place. It's basically like a college. They live here, they eat here, they sleep here. And then they practice every day and play games throughout the calendar year.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you, all of you, for that introduction. I want to move forward by first just getting some basics in place for everyone who has joined us today. I think there are, of course, a lot of people who will understand what the student athlete is or what the NCAA is, and some people that would not. So I want to, of course, go through these 2-3 things with you to make sure that everyone understands what we are talking about. So starting first with what exactly a student athlete is. It's a phrase that is pretty self-explanatory where you're a student and an athlete. But from my perspective, it is the student athlete pathway is basically a platform for a player to take both his professional career as a footballer, as a soccer player, and the academic journey forward together, be it in a 4-year university degree in the US. So it is something that is quite unique. Nothing like this exists in any other country in the world. And I would like you coaches to share some more information about what really does it mean to be a student athlete or what it takes to be a student athlete.
Yeah, I can tell you from an international perspective. You look at a lot of European countries where we came from, Spain, Portugal, Germany. It's very difficult to to excel in both the academic and athletic fields.
Mhm.
So lots of young footballers are forced with a difficult decision at 15, 16 to maybe drop out of school in order to sign a professional contract, or drop out of school in order to focus on their professional career. The beautiful thing about this pathway that we're discussing today is that we provide the pathway and the platform to excel at both. So you can come in and train every day with high level coaches and fantastic facilities, and some of the facilities that you can see, I mean, it's easy to find them. They're better than some Premier League clubs.
Mhm.
Well, but you have obviously the academic rigor of getting a top degree. So we'll talk again about what a day in the life looks like, or what a week looks like for a student athlete. But the challenge is to balance that, to find that balance between going to class every day, going to training every day, taking exams while maybe playing in playoffs. It's certainly a challenge for any young aspiring student athlete, but there's certainly a fantastic support network in place for the kids that come through our programs. We have academic support, we have psychological support, nutritional support, strength and conditioning support. They're really, in my view as a coach, that I try and help them to understand how privileged they are to have the position. Now, from an American point of view, it's sort of part of their pathway. The sort of the norm is to go through high school and then go to a college or university and attain your degree. It's not the norm for an international student necessarily to do that.
I think there's lots of similarities in what you said, since you are an international student as well, and of course a lot of the people attending today will be international students. It is sometimes hard to completely understand what it means as a student athlete, because you are, when you think of going to university, it's more of academically inclined, but to understand that when you're going as a student athlete, you will be in an environment that, as you mentioned, is almost as professional as Premier League clubs, and you will have your education as well, but there's no area where it's you put as much focus on your sport as well on your academics. So that is something that's very important to know for international players.
Yeah, I think Aryaman, I think that's one of the things that's important to understand as well. I mean, obviously, just the scope of college sports, right? It's going to be viewed very differently. Obviously, we're here discussing college soccer, but there's so many other pathways that are available for other sports. Other sports are going to be viewed very differently, right? Like how we would view a student athlete that's playing soccer is very different than a student athlete that's maybe playing basketball,
correct,
or even American football, right? The education component might not be viewed as strongly on those sports, but certainly for soccer, the career pathways, they're always going to be more heavily weighted towards their degree afterwards, and I think that's one of the important things to really highlight and emphasize, because young players, right, who are in high school, they tend to think more short term. I'm going to play professionally, I'm going to do this and that, but they don't understand that professional careers can be very, very short.
Correct.
Right? Like they only last a couple of years. My own career in question, right? So what you do for the rest of your life, the next 35 years of your life, you're probably going to rely on that degree for.
Correct.
So it allows us to kind of ensure their stability, ensure their earnings long term for the rest of their lives.
Correct. It really provides a safety net to players, of what to do post their career, even if things don't go well in their career. And I want to, of course, discuss a lot more about the life of a student athlete, as you had mentioned. But before that, I wanted to give some more context to the people who have joined us about what the structure of university soccer is in the US, about how it works with the NCAA, what the different divisions are. Since all of you are from different divisions, just want to shed some light so that the players and parents have a better understanding of the conversation that we are having. To give a brief overview to the people who have joined, all college um, all college sports comes under the NCAA, which is a National Collegiate Athletic Association in the US. It is an organization that basically organizes all university sports and, of course, soccer as well. Under this, there's a Division One, Division Two, and a Division Three. These are the different divisions, and what I really wanted to discuss with you coaches is what do these divisions represent? What does it mean to be in a Division One? How do you differentiate these divisions so that the players and parents get a better understanding as to, as we mentioned, James, your university plays in the Division One, and Joseph, you are in Division Three. What are those differences? And yeah, just some more information on how the divisions work in the US. We could start with Joseph. You could take it on. What? How did I lose my network?
Where they get less opportunities to train and play. And Joel, you can obviously cut me off here if I'm getting anything wrong here, but the Division One level is seen as the top level for athletics, and Division Three, you could argue, is more academically driven, like I said. But I think most of the resources, most of the money in the NCAA, most of the facilities are driven by Division One schools. So obviously Division One schools with American football, with big marquee basketball programs, they are going to generate a lot of revenue for those institutions. And then that sort of trickles down into our sports, into soccer. So that sort of creates that difference in level, if you like. But yeah, I think it's just slightly more serious in terms of the sport at the Division One level, but obviously the Division Three level has a lot of high level quality athletes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think irrespective of the Division 1, 2, and 3, you're always going to find programs that the expectations and what they place the athletes under, it's going to be very similar, right? Even though we're a Division 3 program, we're never going to find a time where we're asking, okay, we want any less than your best, right? We're never going to say that to a player. So the expectations, that we place on our players are probably going to be similar to what James would do or any other Division 1 or any Division 2 school would be, right? Like, we don't give them a pass because they're playing Division 3. The biggest difference, obviously, is we don't get to offer any athletic aid, right? James can offer financial incentives for coming to play for his team, similar to Division 2 as well. At Division 3, there is more of an academic focus. We don't have the ability to bypass admissions, so you have to fall within academic ranges in order to get into the school. James can take a player who's maybe not the strongest of students, but has a certain level of soccer talent and can get them into the school that way. So there's definitely there's more an emphasis, I would probably say, of the sporting talent, and using that to leverage the educational side of things, where Division 3, more of that is shifted towards the excelling academically. Now, there is caveats to all of this stuff, as James mentioned. There's many of the very best academic schools in the US are Division 1 programs. Think about the Ivy Leagues, right? Like Stanford. Like these are all Division 1 programs, but also some of the highest performing schools academically. So there's a massive gamut, right? Like there's all these different schools that play at different levels. But I think, what you're going to find is that irrespective of the division, the expectations are going to be incredibly high. James mentioned about the timing and things like that. That's probably one of the biggest differentiators than us. In terms of their finals, they're about 1 week before and 1 week after us. So their season is extended essentially 2 weeks. In the off season, so when the season is ended and the last ball is being kicked, James will be able to have much more involvement with his team, where at the Division 3 level it has to be a little bit more hands off. The Division 1 and the Division 2, I say Division 1, but the Division 2 schedule runs very similar to Division 1. So, if I say Division 1, it's kind of like a blanket for both of them. Division 3 is a little bit more hands-off until we get to the spring. And then it's been expanded in the last couple of years. James, I think you're allowed 45 sessions with your team. Yeah. In the spring, we're allowed 24. So we're still allowed to get our hands on the team fairly often. But it is still significantly less. But yeah, we still have the same expectations. We just have to apply it in different ways.
Makes sense. And Colin, you were at a Division 2. Could you give us some perspective as to how that was? Because I think a Division 2, according to my understanding, is like a mix of two. Like it's not a Division where the requirement is like it's a good balance of academics and athletics. So how do you think that varies from a Division 1 and a Division 3?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of academics, it's like any place in the country. You'll have some schools that are very strong, mm-hmm. some that are stronger than others. Like, for example, Dominican, where I coach, they have an excellent nursing program.
Okay.
So, the business program is okay.
Mm-hmm.
The nursing program and the criminal justice program are very, very strong.
Okay.
So I think it's important, Division 2 is a good level. I think where, in terms of sport, where they fall a little bit short is their facilities may not be comparable to a Division 1 and a Division 3 school, just overall. There's some, University of Tampa is Division 2, but they're more or less, they have Division 1 facilities where, no knock to where I coached, but the facilities there were not top tier for a very long time. Now they have a nice turf field. So I think that's where you find it in terms of playing, and it's like Joe said, it's very comparable to Division 1. So I think when, you have a lot of kids that will go Division 1,
mm-hmm.
as you talked about the or will go Division 2, as you talked about the NCAA eligibility center.
Correct.
So James could be recruiting a kid to go to Iona, but maybe his grades were not up to par.
Mm-hmm.
So he could end up at a Division 2 school. So, they're a little more lenient with the academic side in Division 2. So, everybody's been a kid once, and sometimes they might have, messed up in the classroom and their first or second year of high school, and it kind of affected them long term. So Division 2 is a place where they're more acceptable of and forgiving for that, and I would say.
One thing that I wanted to understand is that the divisions, the way they are structured or divided, is not always considered that Division 1 is the best versus Division 2 and then Division 3. For example, you had mentioned that Tampa has facilities of a Division 1. I think there's multiple universities, even in terms of quality of play, that can be in a Division 3 sometimes, that can compete with Division 1 universities. Of course, there will be the top of Division 1 that may just be at a different level. But do you see that very often, where there's a lot of movement from players, level and quality in different divisions?
Yeah, I mean, every Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3 have a totem pole, right? There's always the top, there's the guys in the middle, and the guys at the bottom. So very good Division 3 schools could beat some D1 schools. Mm-hmm. Some very good D2 schools can beat Division 1 schools. So it's all dependent. And then, as James and Joe know, there's a new thing called the transfer portal.
Correct.
So you see kids, like, for example, James might have been recruiting a kid to go to Iona, but his grades might not have been the best, so he could send him to Dominican, to me, for 2 years.
To improve and then eventually go to Iona.
Yeah, me and James kind of have that. James is sending me a good player. I'm okay with it. And then I send him off to James after he gets his grades up. And, if he's a really good player, they want to be playing at the highest level possible in case they're good enough to go pro.
So
But
it's not constricted that if you're in a Division 2 or Division 3, you're going to be there for 4 years. There's a lot of transfer and movement of players from one level to the other, which of course will happen internally within coaches.
But Aryaman, I think as well, it's important to understand because, we actually had this situation play out where Colin had a player who was playing at the Division 2 level.
Okay.
He's an exceptional player, but he wanted more academically. So he actually transferred from the Division 2 school to NYU, played Division 3 soccer, but got a better quality education.
Fair enough. From basically what I'm understanding, and I think the main thing for a student whenever he's looking at a university for him is just finding the right fit. Academically, athletically,
100%.
the relationship with the coach, the place where he's staying. Is it hot? Is it cold? I see very often that players get stuck that I need to go to a Division 1 school because it's Division 1. I think there's like multiple other factors that need to be considered other than just what division your school is in, what would fit you best, because that's where you are going to be for the next 4 years. And I think all those need to be ticked rather than just one.
Yep. James, do you know how many players are in the transfer portal?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I just know that I think there was maybe 400 entries within the first couple of days when it opened up. It was I mean, now it's like I said, it's quite unstable actually, the environment, because we build a team and retention is very important for us. You want to keep your players for 4 years, and that's how we build successful teams and successful cultures. But unfortunately, with the way the environment is now, if a player doesn't get maybe the minutes on the field that he likes, or maybe he doesn't have a good dynamic with his professors, or maybe it's just the environment in the town locally, something doesn't fit, something doesn't connect or sit well, then they're going to try something else, and they're free to do that, but I don't think it's necessarily a good thing for them long term. But that's just the way the situation is. We're talking about levels, Division 1, 2, 3, but I think it's important to understand that even within Division 1, there are so many levels within Division 1.
Just to give everyone a perspective, there's about, correct me if I'm wrong in the numbers, but 200 plus universities in each division. And then, of course, we have the NAIA, which is a separate body with another 200 universities. So you're looking at basically 1,000 plus universities where you can possibly be placed and recruited. So, I don't think there's a lack of opportunity, but it's very important to not get lost in the choices and figure out what works best for you as a athlete and as a student.
I think I think it's very important, like you said, Aryaman, is getting an understanding of what environment you're going to go into and speaking with the coach and staff, getting that face-to-face time with your coach and staff, getting to understand them as people as well as just, looking at the pictures of the facilities on the website. That's a lot of boys, especially at the Division 1 level, they think the grass is always greener at a quote-unquote bigger universities, and they go to these places and they don't necessarily find the happiness that they need, So I think the culture piece and the environmental piece for me is the most important thing.
Definitely. Colin, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just think it's important for the families to know that, like your country, this country is massive. Like Joe for himself came here and he ended up in Mississippi and then transferred to Dominican in New York. So, it's in different parts of the country are very different than the East Coast. So, as you said, ideally you want to be somewhere for 4 years. I don't know too many people that transfer out of NYU, but, it's important that when you're doing your research, you research the location and the area, because some of these schools are in the middle of nowhere, and some kids are okay with that. But it's just important to, do as much research as possible about the location.
I think that's one of the things to understand. I guess maybe it just goes back to kind of reaffirming what you were saying initially, Aryaman, right? On any given day, you could go in and there'll be about 1,000 kids, at least 1,000 kids in the transfer portal. That is 1,000 players who didn't do their due diligence on the front end, right? Who didn't do that research, that homework. They maybe narrowed their focus and were only paying attention to playing Division 1 soccer.
Correct.
Right? That they never landed up in the right place and decided, look, this is not for me. Colin mentioned that I transferred. The internet and, even what we have right now, what we're doing right now, these things weren't an option to me back in 2004. Right? There's no excuse for not being able to get the information now and having the people there available to you.
Exactly.
And this is the important part now that kids have to understand is, as James mentioned, you want to find your place that, you go there for 4 years, you have a great experience, and you walk out the door with your degree ready to take on the world, right? Like that's what you want. It becomes very messy and the war becomes very muddy when you start bouncing from school to school.
Correct.
So, finding that school and establishing what your priorities are and what the best fit for those priorities are, that is absolutely crucial.
Yes, no, I agree with that. And moving on, I also wanted you guys to slightly touch on the scholarships. How does the scholarship system work in the US? How do you, as university coaches, manage your scholarship funds or distribute it to incoming students? Just a quick touch on that, so we can go through the other questions as well. But yeah, I think the players and parents would be very interested to know how the scholarships work in the US.
Yeah, I can just tell you quickly that at my institution, we give out pretty good academic scholarships. So anywhere within the region of $20,000 to $28,000, away from the cost of tuition, the overall cost of attendance, which is around $70,000 a year. So if you can knock off 25,000 from having good grades or having appropriate grades for the institution, then that's a great start. Internationals, they don't get any government help. Obviously, you're not going to get anything from any federal aid, but domestic student athletes can get some need-based financial aid based on your family situation, your mother and your father's income, or and they'll have a look at their taxes and they'll make that estimate based on that. And then I can also allocate athletic scholarship,
Correct.
which is, as Joe mentioned, there's a difference between myself and Division 3. Colin at the Division 2 level could give athletic money as well. So
Correct.
how I allocate that money is how basically the level of impact that I believe that individual is going to have on the program from year to year. It could be that I don't give athletic money right away, but if they become an impactful and positive contributor to the program in year 2, year 3, then their scholarship can build over the course of the 4 years.
Understood.
Or it could be someone who I feel this is a kid who's going to make a huge impact right off the bat, and I'm going to make sure that everything's covered for. So I can build this athletic and the academic money together to cover the cost of attendance.
All right, no, that makes sense. And just to clarify for everyone who was here, according to the divisions, so in Division 1 and Division 2, you can give academic and athletic scholarship. In Division 3, such as New York University, you can only give academic scholarship. But you can, of course, give financial aid, like James mentioned, in terms of what the situation of a player is in their family. So that is one of the big differences in the division. The NAIA, you can also get athletic scholarship, which is a different organization similar to the NCAA. Is there anything else that you look at, or I guess taking this to my next question for the three of you, what is something that you look at in a student athlete profile? Because I know that coaches get thousands of profiles and highlight videos. So what is something that stands out for you? What is something that a student does or puts in his profile or highlight that for you is like, okay, this is a player that I'm interested in?
I think that again, that's where the variation comes in, right? Different schools within each of the levels is going to require very different things. Harvard in Iona, both Division 1 programs, they're probably looking for the top soccer players, right? The very best that they can find from all over the world. But what Harvard is obviously going to require academically is going to be exponentially different than maybe Iona is. So even though the soccer aspect is the same, academically it's going to be different. It's the same for us at NYU. You know, there's so much disparity within the division. You know, what we will look for academically is going to be very different from, you know, from a large number of the other schools, you know, within our division. So even though we're all competing under the same rules, the standards of admittance to the school is going to be very, very different.
Okay.
So for us, I mean, you never close doors by being a good student, right? You know, the better your grades are, the more doors that you open for yourself. You're going to open up more Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3 doors.
The players
by
should be
being a
listening
good
to that
student.
clearly. Your grades are as important as you are on the field.
Yeah. So, you know, being a top student is never going to work against you. So always, especially for us at NYU, as we are such a, you know, a high academically driven school, you know, top-notch grades, you know, performing really well in high school, taking a high rigor of classes, that's going to be super important. If you're taking standardized tests, those scores have to be incredibly high. That's obviously, you know, that's the first kind of qualifier for us because we don't get to bypass admissions. Then obviously we're looking, you know, with the soccer coach's hat on, we're looking for them as the player. You know, are they going to be one of those players that James mentioned is going to be impactful on the field, has a level of talent that can come in and contribute and, you know, and maybe move the needle within the program. And then obviously the final part is we spend a lot of time together. We're talking about 4 years of someone's life together.
Correct.
Right. You know, especially for us at NYU, you know, we fly, we're on planes, you know, we're on bus trips, we're in hotels at weekends, you know, for games. You spend a lot of time with these people. So if you don't get the right people, even though they might be good students and they might be good soccer players, if it doesn't fit on a human level, it's not going to work. It's not going to be one of these good experiences. So, you know, when we see these profiles, you know, obviously we're looking for their grades and their transcripts and their test scores. We're watching videos and we're trying to get out there and scout them, and we're seeing them with their team or we're seeing them at camps. And then we're obviously trying to have the in-person connections as well. Zoom calls and phone calls and meeting in person. Like, these are all really, really important things that we want to see within you know, people's profiles.
That also takes me to our next question. Colin, maybe you could take that on. Is as a recruitment process, how long do you like to, you know, look at a player or engage with a player, and what is the process as a coach once, let's say, you do identify a player that you think works for you? Then how long would you like to work with him to see him and understand him better?
Well, you know, you try to see these kids as much as possible. For kids in different countries, it's more difficult. So we look for highlight videos and we look for, you know, full game film. I know some places don't do that, but it's super important so we can have context to the player, because, you know, not me anymore, not being in Division 2, I don't get as many emails, but, you know, Joe and James get thousands of emails a year of players interested. So I think it's important, the context and delivery of the email that is sent to the coaches. You know, and we could probably share a good example of that with you to share with the families.
Yes, that'd be great.
You know, but when Joe or James and I, you know, we recruit live with American kids, and with a lot of internationals, it's on highlight videos, and we can tell. You know, I've been doing it for 17 years, and I think, you know, only once or twice I got it wrong off a highlight video, so we can kind of tell. So, you know, those are important, and I think you can get a good feel for their technical ability, their work ethic, their knowledge of the game, when you're able to have a good video off of them. You know, and then if there's showcases, you know, I know myself, I've been to Spain, I've been to Chile, I've been to Brazil, I know James has been all over. Joe goes a lot of places. So, we do get to see them live as much as possible. I would say that's what's nice about my prep school, South Kent, for these kids, these international kids, is we go to roughly 8 university showcases a year throughout the calendar year. So instead of these international kids trying to reach Joe or James
Directly.
via email and over the internet, now they're here in America and they get that live ability for the coaches to see them.
Understood.
So that obviously helps. So that's kind of the draw for my school, that these kids now are here. They're getting accustomed to the life. And my school is a pre-college environment because, everything we do here is,
What they do in college itself.
Yeah, and we prepare them. That's why it's called a prep school.
Yeah.
We prepare them for college life.
Makes perfect sense. And the last point of this question, I'll ask you, James, is what is the average time you engage with a player? Would you say it's 1 year, 2 years, 6 months? How long would you like to be engaging with a player that you think will be a prospective player for you next year?
I think for me and for a lot of Division 1 programs, I would say the average time is about a year, maybe just over a year. And I know there's differences in Division 3. I think Joe is almost, probably about 6 months, I would say, ahead of us in that sense. I know on the... You guys got me there? I was a little connection.
I have you.
We okay?
Yeah.
And I know on the women's side, they're almost a year ahead of us, sometimes more than that. But for us, I could be recruiting for, we start in August 3rd, we have to report. I was still recruiting a month ago for this season, just because we know, and for example, the European academies, they will lose players, they will drop players from and not offer players these contracts at that time. So we need to be ready to pick up those players as well. And like we mentioned before, with the movement of players in the transfer portal, it's constantly moving. From an ideal perspective, I think we can look at them a year in advance, and we get out to watch them play. We continually keep in contact with them. We'll bring them onto campus. We'll get to know them as people. Maybe we'll invite them to a camp that we're attending so we can get to interact with them on a personal level.
I think that's
a year.
Yeah, I think it's very important for the players and parents to know that, because from when we started seeing, Indian players who want to do this or get into the US university pathway, thinking of starting a year or a year and a half in advance sounds a little bit too early for them. They don't understand that US coaches are looking at players that much in advance, and that they need to start setting up their profile and the highlight videos maybe even a year before. So, when you're already in your class 10 or class 11, because you as coaches want to see them develop as players as well. So, it's very important for players and parents to understand that starting this process the earlier is better. Because if you see a player and you want to track him and track his journey, it just gives you more confidence in the player and gives the player also a chance to, explore more opportunities. It is one of those.
Aryaman, the thing that I think is you got to understand as well, the most important thing here is not the fact that we want to recruit soccer players at a certain time. It's the schools have admissions deadlines.
Correct.
Right, that are very fixed, especially once you get to the high academic schools. So, for context, all the kids that we have coming in this current fall, okay, they had applied November 1st of last year, right? So it's not that we wanted to, have more time to recruit them. I would love to have more time to recruit these kids and, and see them a little bit closer to where, they will be when we get them. But all the kids now, for 2026, so for next fall coming in, I have to have them recruited by November 1st of this year.
Correct.
Right, so that's what's driving our timeline, not the fact that we need more information. We just have to start a little bit earlier because as James mentioned, our timeline comes quicker than his, right? So that's why we have to move kids quicker.
And therein lies one of the main differences between Division 3 and Division 1. right? So with my admissions department, are slightly more flexible with the deadlines, whereas I think an institution like NYU, very strict.
Very strict with deadlines. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's another difference in the divisions. I really wanted to also address, of course, we've spoken a lot about what the student athlete is, the divisions, your recruitment, scholarships. Something that I think gets missed out a lot when we have these conversations is the style of play at US University College. I think it's very peculiar and it's very different to, I know, towards to Indian football or even towards any other professional leagues. So, if you could share some information about what you think the university soccer is like in the US, what a player needs to do or what he should expect when he is looking to come into university soccer over there.
Yeah, I think program by program, you're going to see a lot of differences, and it depends on the sort of philosophical ideas of the coach, if there are any. I think in general, a lot of the times when I'm talking to a prospect, an international player that I'm interested in, I'm open to tell them that college soccer at the Division 1 level is not great. It's not high level soccer you're playing for the most part, but there are some teams that still play some good soccer. I like to think that the type of team that I'm building, we are a good football team. We're a good possession-based team. We like to play through the thirds of the field. It's why I'm looking for highly technical players that like to get on the ball. But week in, week out, we play against teams that are very much in contrast to that style of play, very transitional, very based in physicality a lot of the time. And that's not to say that it's bad, because it works. The last game that we played against Vermont, who were a team who went on and won the national championship. They were the number 1 team in the country. They won everything. They beat us 5-0. We had more possession than them in the game, and we didn't play badly, but we lost 5-0. So that transitional style can obviously be effective. But so it's just there's such a spectrum of stylistic and philosophical ideas, but again, you have to find your fit. If you're a physical player and if you're fast and you're transitional, then there's going to be a lot of teams where you can fit. But if you're highly technical and you like to get on the ball and you like to be a bit more methodical in the way that you play, then there's a place for you as well.
Yeah.
But again, you have to do research.
Comes back to the fact of finding the right fit, I think. But I had a question for you over here, Colin. Do you see a lot of players change a lot by spending time with you and get more prepared for the style of play in the US? Do you see that transition really helping them because they're there and they're getting an opportunity to see that environment firsthand?
Yeah, I think the unique thing about South Kent is we play an all year round model of soccer.
Okay.
So I actually play more than James and more than Joe. Last year, from the last week in August till the last week in May, we recorded 50 matches. Which seems like a lot, but in the 9-month span, they were very balanced. In the fall, it's like a Wednesday and a Saturday. In the winter, it's about 1 game on the weekend. And then in the spring, it's back to the Wednesday, Saturday model. They're training every day. So, I recruit my players, but the school also has some kids that come here. And, I had 2 kids that were on my team that, I'll be straight up honest, one of the kids was not very good at all. And in his 2 years time here, just playing with better players and training every day, kid was taking 30-yard passes off his thigh and, scoring a goal that you never thought was possible. So these kids do improve. We have them in the weight room, strength and conditioning. The food here is, geared towards the athlete in terms of, protein and carbs and all that stuff. So, the players here really do get prepared. And, being that I coached college for 15 years, I kind of know the model. I know what some universities look for, and, but every college coach is different. So, I had some players that James was keen on for a little bit, but then, it wasn't the right fit. So, but all of our players this year that I had, all my seniors, went on to play Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3 for this fall. So, there's a home for every single kid. As you said, there's so many universities. You didn't even include the junior college path, which is an option as well, to get accustomed to it. But these kids do improve. They get used to it. And as James said, James's teams have always played a very attractive possession style against their opponents, but it goes both ends of the spectrum. I coach in a semi-pro league, and we played a team called the Long Island Rough Riders the other night and lost 4-2. And every time their center backs got it, they just kicked it long, and they had two very big, strong, fast, athletic forwards that are good soccer players, and it's effective for them. So we try to prepare them for everything possible. But every coach sees a player differently. Joe sees, we could have a kid here named John, and I see him one way, Joe sees him a different way, and James sees him a different way. So it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. I have one final question, then I would like to open it up for questions for the people who have joined us. But I wanted to just understand what you see of the transition of players from university soccer into professional soccer. Is that something that is that something that happens often, doesn't happen, or do you see the mindset of players change when they're at university? I do think that there's an idea in players' heads, especially in India, that when you do go into university, you are putting your career at a backseat, and I don't think that's particularly correct. I think with the structure that the US allows and the kind of facilities that they have, it really helps you to do both simultaneously. So yeah, I just wanted to understand a little bit of I'm sure you've experienced players who have gone to play football or who haven't gone to play football. So how does that look like?
Well, can I just make a point first? It's never going to be the program. It's never going to be the name of the school that determines whether the player plays professionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be whether that player is actually good enough.
Correct.
Vermont, who James mentioned, won the Division 1 championship, this past year. Okay, they probably have a roster of at least 30 players. Mm-hmm. 30 of those players are not playing professionally now, right? If their senior class was, maybe 8 players, 8 of those players are probably not playing professionally, right? Maybe one. It's the same with all the the players in the ACC, right? Arguably the top conference. Clemson and Duke and North Carolina, all these top schools that are top programs, facilities, like professional teams. Very few of those players actually go on and make a career playing professional soccer. Sustainable money that they can retire on. Very, very few of those players. So, when you come to college, I think this is maybe where we have to try and change the narrative. Irrespective of Division 1, 2, or 3, the chances of you playing professional sports are incredibly small.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly small. At Division 3, I would say you're talking about fractions of 1% that go on and play professionally. Not even career professionals, but step foot on the field as a professional. Now the numbers will be significantly higher. James will probably be able to reference 9 or 10 players, in his time there that have gone on, but probably not making a career of it. Probably, at least 50 or 60% of those players are doing something else that they leverage their education for at this point. So, I think that there will be professional opportunities available. It won't be because the program made them a good player. It's because they were already a good player.
Correct.
And the program just gave them a platform to continue to develop.
Correct. I would like to add something here, then we'll just end with you, James, is that I also look at it as a perspective of course, since we have a lot of Indian players over here, that the US does offer the environment for a player to really develop, like you mentioned, Joseph, and use that development to then come back into opportunities within your own country as well. For example, coming back into India and playing at a high level, because that kind of 4 years of development and player support that you get really helps enhance them and get them ready at the age of 22, 23 to maybe try some professional opportunities back in their home country, be it India in this case. So that is, of course, one way to look at it as well. And the best part of it is that, let's say things don't work out, you have a university degree at the end of it. So yeah, James, just wanted to hear your point from a Division 1, and then we'll open it for questions for the people.
Yeah, the rate of success or the rate of players going from Division 1 to professional is also small. I think it's less than 5%. Maybe that's been generous. And these players from the top level, we mentioned Vermont, who were the national champions. One of their players, and he was one of the best players on the field, signed a professional contract with NYCFC, which is the professional team in New York. However, he's only playing for their B team. He's playing in the MLS Next Pro, as they call it. So it's a reserve league, which is the same league that some of my players have gone to play in. So none of them are signing for Premier League teams. None of them are signing for Man City. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
You do hear the odd story of a player doing well and is where he goes, and he's worked his way through the ranks. I think there's a boy playing in La Liga right now who is a college player, but it's so rare. It's one or two guys I can, off the top of my head, in the last 10 years. But yeah, that development that you get through your 4 years, as from a physical point of view, right? You come in at 18, then there's a lot of physical development to go through there. There's a lot of tactical development and improvement you need to make. At the end of your 4 years, some of my guys have gone to play in Sweden and Finland and just found that, again, we're going back to the right fit, that place where you can see yourself being successful.
Mm-hmm.
We have players who come in and we ask them, do you have aspirations to be a professional? Do you still have that dream? And we want to keep that dream alive for 4 years.
Correct.
And then at the end of the 4 years, if you have a difficult decision to make, do I go and play for this team professionally, or do I take this fantastic job opportunity that I got in New York City? I think as a coach, I've done my job. I've prepared them for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And if they want to make that decision to go and play in Iceland for 2 years, then great, extend your career for as long as possible, but then you have that degree as well to I don't even want to say to fall back on, but you just have that degree.
Transition. I think looking at it as a transition is the right way to look at it.
For sure.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So it's the development that I think players should look at, and not as I'm going to be there and then from there I'm going to be a professional player. It's just use the development in the best way that you can as a person, as a player, and then you see where that takes you.
I agree with everything that Joe said, and sometimes the mistakes that my guys make is they wait until their last year, Aryaman. They wait until their senior year to then, okay, I want to be pro after this, so now I'm going to start acting like a pro. Well, you're 3 years too late. I think you need to have done that from year 1, year 2, year 3. You have that professional mindset, then you'll be ready to make that transition. But if you wait until your last season, it's probably too late.
Correct. I completely agree with you. All right. I'm going to open it up for some questions. I'm seeing some questions come in. Let's I have some people with their hands raised as well. Let's get some questions, some conversations going. I have one on the messages straight away. S. Sharma, I'm just going to read out your message since you have it written here. Is it beneficial for international students to attend college ID camps in their sophomore, junior year? Do college recruit from these ID camps?
Yes, it is. I think for us at NYU, we have like a highly diverse recruiting pool. I think, there's 133 schools represented at NYU. So it's a global university, and our recruiting is representative of that. Even if you were just to go to the website and look at the roster, you'll see it's players from every continent. We've had them from everywhere. So obviously seeing these players play live, we can't casually jump on a plane and fly to India or Singapore and then down to Australia and then come across to Africa. And so that's just not feasible. It's not, we don't have a budget for that. We don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
So the camps are an opportunity to kind of like reaffirm that interest. We know that these players are interested because they're actually coming to play in front of us now. And it's an opportunity for us, rather than just maybe randomly going to a country or randomly going to a showcase, and hopefully you can find someone who's interested in your program and in your school. You know that by you being at a camp, they have a mutual interest, and they also align with what you're looking for academically as well. So I would say that, it's kind of like a hybrid of both, right? Like, we see that initial player who maybe reaches out, shares their profile, which includes some video highlights. We say, yes, if this is a player that could do this consistently, they would be a player that would be able to help us. Now you want to see them play live, so it kind of confirms everything that you're looking for.
Understood.
As you know, I could probably put, a highlight video from one of my over 40s matches together, right? And everyone would say, oh my gosh, like Joe is such a fantastic player.
Correct.
But we know that that's just what, people can do in highlight videos. Right, I've seen a lot of highlight videos where I've seen it like this could be a really good player, and I've gone and seen that player live, and it doesn't align, it doesn't match up. So, again, seeing players play live, I like the ID camp model because I actually get to coach them. They're not with their own coaches where it's comfortable and they're playing a system that they're used to. I might want to use that player in a different way, and that allows me to be able to do that. So
makes sense.
There's just so many advantages, and they get to be coached by the coach as well, because the way that James will coach his players and Colin will coach his players and I coach my players, all very different, right? And sometimes, some players respond to different coaches in different ways.
Makes sense. Moving on, I'm going to allow you, whoever's raising their hands, to unmute and ask their question. I would request everyone to not unmute together. So Neela Patil, let me just allow you access to your microphone. Yeah, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
So my question was that what do you think a player like me should to go pro? What should we do?
So, of course, that is going to be a very broad answer. If you are, for example, what is your age right now? What class are you in?
I am 14 years old.
Sorry?
14 years old.
So, of course, that's a very broad question that I can take on in terms of, as a player your age. I think it's very important to explore all opportunities, be it looking at Europe, academies in India, or the US, and these things can work simultaneously. But the most important for your development is getting maximum game time and then seeing where those opportunities can lead for you. So, a lot more detailed this question is, and I'll be very happy to connect with you post this call to discuss that in detail.
Thank you very much.
All right. Moving on to anyone else with any questions can raise their hand, or I'll just read what is there in the chat box. Whatever. Shantanu Shinde, you can unmute yourself and please ask your question.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hope you are all doing well. Like, I just wanted to ask, like, having played professionally for clubs, like I've played for Rebels, Minerva, and now I'm working with India as one of the oldest premier football clubs, Hindustan FC. I wasn't aware such US scholarship programs and student athlete pathways at that time. So like many young Indian footballers still miss out on these opportunities simply due to lack of awareness at the right stage of their careers. So my question is, how is this model reaching grassroots or academy level players in India, and what steps are being taken to ensure that talented athletes are informed and guided at the right age before it's too late?
So, great question, Shantanu. I think, again, slightly directed towards me and IKF because it's India related. But I think this webinar is by itself a first step that we are taking, to educate and provide information about this pathway and that it exists. We or IKF as an organization sees this as a realistic pathway, and our objective is that players like you don't miss out on these opportunities. We want to continue to have these webinars with coaches to give as much information so that these opportunities are not missed out. So we from our side are trying to share as much information, as much knowledge as openly as possible, and trying to share that. And of course, from the coach's perspective, if they do see a good player in India, I believe that they would then want to come back into India for the next player. So
Mhm.
if we provide James or Joseph or Colin with a good Indian player, next year if they need a right back or a left back, I'm sure you'll come back to us and say, "Oh, do you have another left back or right back?" I'm sure you could share some experiences of maybe countries where you got unexpected players from and wanted to get more talent from there.
Yeah, I had 5 kids from Chile
Okay.
uh, on my team the last 2 years. It kind of happened by chance, and they all did very well, and they're very not only good soccer players, but they were good in our community. Good people. So I connected with the person that's kind of like you down in Chile, Arman.
Hmm.
And I went down there last December, um, and I was able to get a very good attacking player um, from the same guy in the Chileans to come this year to school. I thought I was going to get a center back. I ended up losing him, but I've kept that pipeline connected. So as you said, if you get one player from a certain country or someone that's helping them and they are successful and they represent your university or your school very well, you're very keen to go back there and try to get one of those players. And we actually had, from that same person, we had one that went to South Kent and then played for James at Iona as well, and was a very good player. And he was a kid that probably had the mindset and tools to play professional,
Hmm.
and he just didn't get that little bit of luck. But now he's created a great life for himself here in New York.
Actually, I can add that he had an offer. He was one of those guys who made the decision to take a job in financial advising instead of going to New York Red Bulls.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. We'll take maybe two, three more questions. Yogal Kishore Sharma, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, Aryaman, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Great. Yeah, so I think thanks for the quite a good session to understand more on how to get the Indian talent tapped on towards football. And as you know that uh, I've been nurturing a football club of my own.
Hmm.
Our team manager had just asked the question before me, uh, Shantanu Shinde. So basically, football is uh, uh, the most important, I would say, sport that will hit our country now. Uh, it has been a predominantly cricket playing nation. We've been, like it's like cricket is a religion for us in our country, as you all know, how dominant we are in that. So I think I'm nurturing a football club, and I'm just able to visualize what you guys are doing. I think Colin, James, and Joseph. Something similar at a lower level is what we are doing here. So I nurture a club. We have an academy right inside instead of a university, it's a sports college
Hmm.
where the kids they play football at our academy, and then they also get to be in a class starting from class fifth onwards,
Hmm.
and right up to the graduates and postgraduates, but in sports domain mostly, largely. So they become into sports, and I would be very happy that the way you explained that one of the young talent from Chile, he went into financial advising rather than taking soccer as a career. So these are something very nice insights. So I would maybe coordinate with Aryaman and look forward to hear from you guys that we could be one of your talent stop one stop destination where we are doing something similar at a India level, Delhi level, and we could have a straight line tie up wherein we could give the best talent good in academics, of course. And India is having a lot of students out in US anyways, right?
Correct.
So I
Yeah.
just want to park this thought,
No,
and of course for coaching and other dimensions as well.
yes, no, I think that is, of course, that would be a great connection. and hopefully we will have players coming up from this academy into hopefully one of your universities soon. We're going to take a few more. Rohit Binoy Vasudevan, you can unmute yourself.
Hello all. My name is Rohit. I'm 15 years old.
Mhm.
So just a simple one. Now, could you just mention an example where an Indian student has actually succeeded in this program and has gone high also? And also, could you mention, like, if we really do want to, pursue this career and we want to get into this program, where do we start?
Mhm. Yeah, Rohit, thanks for your question. Aryaman, I'm just going to jump in here. When Aryaman and we initially connected, this was one of the reasons that we actually decided to make this connection, right? Because we had identified that there was such a large population that was really underrepresented in US college sports, right? So there's not really a lot of examples that we could go back and that we could really reference. Now we've had some players who of Indian heritage, but they were born and grew up in the US, right? We've never been able to go to India and directly take a player from India to our program. So this is what we're trying to establish now, right? Like we're understanding that there's such a big population. As Yugal was mentioned before in his question, and we're starting to see that soccer's really starting to take off, right? It's starting to, whether it will ever rival cricket, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years from now, but it's really, really growing now. So we don't have many specific references. I couldn't say to you, we have this one specific player that I could reference, right, that we were able to take from India. But the hope is that we can, in the future, within the next few years, start to be able to say that we've established these pipelines that, like Colin was mentioned with the boys in Chile, that we can go back to the well each year and we can always look to get one player every year, right? Like that's the ideal goal.
Exactly.
Um,
I would just
so
like
yes,
to
that's kind of built towards.
just like to add to your point there, Joseph. Of course, this is a pipeline that we are creating, but Rohit, to just give you more specifics, we have in fact worked with a player who is based on India, of course, not with NYU or Iowa or with South Kent, but he is a player whose name is Suryansh, and he is currently in his second year with Oberlin College, which is a Division 3. So, it is a success story for a player who has worked with us, who is now currently in Ohio. He is playing as a student athlete, and he's currently actually doing an internship with a venture capitalist firm. So another very good example of a very good student athlete who is getting the benefit of both, where he is getting good football, he is getting good education, and he's doing really well. And for the second part of your question, Rohit, if you want more information on this pathway of how you can start or where to start, just connect with us, post a call, connect with IKF. Our objective of this call is to provide information, all the information. And I know that there'll be a lot of particular questions, individual questions. So please do connect with us after, and we can really sit down and understand what and how we can assist you personally.
Yeah. And Aryan, can I just throw one last thing there as well? And that is an important thing to make sure that we make everyone understand. This is the purpose of this call is not to recruit for South Kent and NYU and Iona only.
Correct.
This is to open up pathways to make people understand that there's opportunities all over the United States for players, right? There's thousands and thousands of schools, thousands and thousands of opportunities. And we want to be able to expose as many players to as many of those different opportunities as we possibly can.
Exactly. We have who else had raised their hand? Preeti Trehan, you have a question? Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I wanted to know about universities that hold summer workshops for younger students, who are growing up to maybe in the next 2 or 3 years to be able to join university. Is there merit in enrolling for these summer programs?
Uh, when you say a summer program, do you mean specifically like a summer school or the ID camps that you were referring to before?
No, going to the universities in the US
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get into, we've heard that there are these programs that universities hold where you can go in and get some kind of an orientation
Mhm.
before you're ready to actually join the university. Are these actually there? And if they are, is there merit in enrolling for these?
Yeah, Aryaman, I can answer that question because I have some exposure to it. We offer them at NYU. I know a lot of the high academic schools will do that. I know that Johns Hopkins is a big one for it. These are academic driven programs that they'll have certain focuses. Johns Hopkins do a big one for the STEM fields. NYU does a lot of the business oriented ones as well. I think that the value in these things are that they're great resume builders, right? Obviously, the child gets exposed to a higher level of learning, so obviously they gain knowledge that they can then take back, and it maybe helps them improve, in their classes. So now their transcript gets stronger. I don't know if it's something that, if you just put this on, it's going to guarantee you anything. I think it's more of an experiential thing as well. But again, it goes back to one of the comments that I made earlier. I think any time that you gain knowledge or you improve your academic profile, it doesn't close doors for you. It just makes you more of an appealing applicant when it comes. So, I wouldn't say that it would guarantee you admission if you went to like an NYU summer program that was offered by the school. I don't think it would guarantee you admission to the school, but it would certainly make you a more appealing candidate for the time when it comes to admissions.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, thank you for that.
I
And
have
what do
a
you think would
follow.
be the right age for a footballer to, be able to enroll?
I mean, I would say for those programs, I mean, I think it varies from person to person. Like, we see some younger kids that are very independent, and putting them on a plane and sending them to a program, it's very, very seamless for them. But someone who's maybe the same age maybe has some more anxieties, or maybe the parents are a little bit more worried about them. Not every kid is created the same, right? Every kid will develop at different times. So I think you have to use your judgment as a parent to say, is my child ready for this? Do they have, do they have the desire to do this stuff? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably a good opportunity to send them. On a soccer side of things, we try and get them exposure to that type of environment a little bit earlier. For the simple fact, you don't want them experiencing it for the first time when everything's on the line, right? Because they might, they might not understand how the environment looks. So, if James is seeing a player for the first time, that player probably doesn't want it to be like his all or nothing.
Preeti,
right?
sorry to interrupt, Joseph. Preeti, could you please mute yourself? There's an echo coming from your end.
Yeah.
Can you please? Yeah. Sorry. Please.
Yeah. So I think that the parent has to decide, in conjunction with their son, is this something that they would be ready for? Sending them there, letting them get a good feel for the environment, let them get comfortable, see what it all looks like, so that when they maybe come back the following year or the year after that, they already know what it's like. You've removed all that anxiety out, and all they have to worry about at that point is performance.
Makes sense. I'd just like to add on that.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Just adding on there is that, like I mentioned earlier as well, working with players, from my point of view, for getting them ready for the US, we like to usually see them in class 10, class 11, and be able to get them ready for situations like this. Get them on conversations with coaches like Joe or James or Colin, because I think that really helps them also get a little bit more mature and get ready for these kind of opportunities. We'll take one last question. We have BT. Could you please unmute yourself and ask?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a quick follow-up question to Preeti's question. Is there any prerequisite for any of these summer camps for the footballers?
Any requirements, you mean?
Yes.
Um, would there be, Joseph?
I mean, I think there's a difference between the academic programs that are run over the summer and
The ID camps.
the IED camps, residential ID camps. I can't imagine those prerequisites, but I think for us, for the camps that we attend and direct, and we expect a decent level of footballer to come. So when we take registrations and we have those initial conversations, we talk about, what level do you play at? If it's someone I've never played soccer before, we're probably going to advise them to maybe look at another level or something else, But from the academic standpoint, I'm not very versed with those type of programs, so Joe's probably in a better position to answer that.
Yeah, if it's the camp for soccer, the NCAA doesn't allow you to offer it just to certain people but not to others. It has to be blanket open to everybody. The only disqualifiers might be if it's for age or based on certain numbers, like you might say it's for 10th graders and up or 11th graders and up. Like, you can make determinations based on that. And then also, boys and girls, you might only have a camp for boys, but you're not allowed to say, based on GPAs or based on, you're not allowed to do it. So any camps that maybe you go out there and you look for, there's going to be so many different ones, right? There's going to be big camps, there's going to be small camps, there's going to be camps on the East Coast and on the West Coast. There's going to be some camps that have schools that you're interested in, some that maybe you're not interested in. There's just so many out there. But I mean, obviously, Aryaman, like, we will share everything that we have with him.
Exactly.
So certainly anything that you guys would be interested in, you can certainly reach out to him, or similarly, all of our emails are on our websites. Mm-hmm. We're always happy to help as well. Again, the main purpose of this is not to get kids to NYU or Iona or South Kent specifically, is to open up opportunities and make sure, because not everybody on this call might be interested in NYU.
Correct.
But if we can help facilitate that conversation to maybe get them where they want to go, that's what we ultimately want to be able to do.
Exactly. I do see some questions and statements about. Sorry, Colin, were you saying something?
I was just going to add one thing about the camps. I think you got to be specific at what you're looking for, obviously, doing your research. So, there's Division III schools that do camps down in Florida, and there's about 10 schools that go there. And then there's summer camps that have, anywhere from 4 to 5 schools, maybe 8 to 10 schools. And then there's some schools that do it individually. So I think that's important too. If you're looking at summer camps, you could look at one that might have 3 or 4 schools that, you're really interested in. So that might be a better option than just going to one individual camp. Or, I'll just use NYU or, let's say, Tufts. If you're solely interested in that one school and you want to take your shot at, because they can be expensive, especially if you're flying from another country. Mm-hmm. So if you can get seen by more coaches that you're interested in, I think that's a great option. But if you say, hey, I really want Tufts, or I really want NYU, or I really want Duke, then you got to take your shot with that as well.
Fair enough. That makes sense. I want to just wrap this up with one last question from my own side. I think we missed it earlier. We had just touched upon it on the side when we started. But what would a schedule of a student athlete look like? If you could just quickly run us through maybe a Division 1 or Division 2, even Division 3. What is an ideal day of a student athlete?
I think it varies greatly. What a freshman will, do is probably different from maybe like a junior or senior. I think it's one of those things that experience matters. We have a number of players that, they'll go to classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they'll just build their schedule out so that they're very busy on those days, and it gives them Thursday and Friday off. Obviously, a freshman, their class requirements will be very different from maybe a junior or senior, right, as they start to narrow down their focus in the classes. So that will impact it as well. It's different, obviously, as well from your high schools, where your day is defined by the time that the school sets. You're in school from 9 till 3. In college, you're choosing your own classes. So, we just basically say block out these times because this is when the team's going to train. Build your schedule around that. So you can be as busy or as light as you want on any given day. The only consistencies from player to player will be the practice and game times.
Okay. And is there a big difference from the amount of demand on a player from a Division 1 to a Division 3 in terms of coaching and training, or does it usually look the same?
Well, sometimes the NCAA will dictate how many hours per week we can work with the team and work within small groups and work with an individual. I don't know the variance between Division 1 and Division 3, but I think general perception is that we spend at Division 1, we spend a little bit more time with the players because of obviously the academic demand is higher at a lot of Division 3 schools. For us, on a daily basis, like Joe says, we tell them between 10 and 1 is our block of training. Obviously, we're not on the field for 3 hours, so they can take a class at 8 a.m., can go and grab something quick to eat. They can go get ready for training. Maybe we'll be in the weight room from 10 till 10:45 doing some sort of physical activation. They'll go on to the training field. We'll train for an hour and a half. They'll then have time to do some rehab with our sports medicine team. They can do that, get lunch, and then they'll have classes afternoon and then into evening as well. So you can build morning, afternoon, evening classes. And that's just a day of training, no games. So that's kind of the standard, what it would look like.
Yeah, perfect. All right. I see some questions regarding of how to connect, and some more personal questions. Anyone who wants to connect after, you can of course directly connect with me. You can directly connect with India Khelo Football. We are all here to help you and directly assist you. So we would like you to personally connect with us post this call. You can connect on Aperio, you can connect personally, but definitely reach out to India Khelo Football. Like we all mentioned, our objective of this call is to provide knowledge, and I think it was a great session where we wanted to do exactly that. India Khelo Football's objective is always to be able to help the players, to provide them various opportunities, various pathways, and this is a new one that we believe is going to only keep growing within Indian football. So yes, anyone with further questions, please reach out to IKF, and we'll be more than happy to help you personally, depending on your personal needs. Um, Other than that, Joseph, James, Colin, thank you so much for your time. It's a Sunday morning for you, but thank you for taking the time out. It's been really great, lots of information. I'm sure all the players and parents really appreciate it. So just thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today.
No, thank you for hosting. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, doing great things, Aryaman. Thank you, everyone, for getting on the call and giving us those questions. Thank you.
James is in Scotland, so it's not early morning for him.
Okay.
Afternoon.
Okay, and of course to the players and parents who joined us, thank you so much for taking the time out. Staying with us for an hour and a half and really understanding this. Like I said, we are available for any questions, queries, personal feedback that you want. Just reach out to IKF, reach out to me, and we can always see on how we can take this forward. But yes, thank you once again for joining, and hopefully we can keep building on this. Like you mentioned, Joseph, I really liked it. This is the start of a pipeline that we will be creating for future student athletes from India.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.